What's up, everyone? Welcome to 5v5 Live. I'm Matt Hempstead. That's Eric Kummel, and we'll be taking your questions, so make sure you send them in today. But we're going to talk about the latest in League of Legends from Week 7. And also, some big news from last night is, believe it or not, Dardoch is back on Team Liquid. He's no longer with CounterLogic Gaming. They let him go. And of course, he re-signs to the team that booed him away a year ago. Makes a lot of sense, right?
I mean, I believe that is the definition of insanity, bringing this same roster back that didn't do so well, and they just keep trying. I don't really know what Liquid's doing.
No, I'm not sure they fully know either. It's a very strange move, along with bringing on a new mid laner as well. But honestly, I'm not too sure. If you have any questions about that, let us know in the comments below, along with any other thing you might have in mind. But first, let's talk about something stuff we know for sure, and that's the newest patch. It's patch 7.14. All kinds of new stuff, new tanks, Kayn in the jungle. What stood out to you in this week?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Kayn overall has been a bit underwhelming. He hasn't really dominated. He's kind of just been there in a lot of these games. But maybe with the changes in the next patch, you might see him they already buffed him a bit, and I think they're going to buff him going forward. It's always scary when a new champion comes out and isn't that strong, because you know Riot is going to put some insane buffs on him and then he'll completely dominate.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Kayn looked pretty good in the hands of contracts. He pulled out 3 games, 2 of them he won against Phoenix once, so I was pretty impressed by his performance. But yeah, some other junglers didn't look so great on it. But it's also now the League of Tanks all over again, where you have Maokai and Cho'Gath wandering the rift. Maokai seems pretty busted.
Yeah.
I mean, the W's always been good, but now you've got the buffed sapling, so you can leash the blue buff. You saw it in the C9 series that, Contrast was able to gank pretty early and didn't take any damage because of the Maokai leash. And then his ultimate covers a very large area.
It basically affects an entire team fight. Guys aren't even attacking. They're just running away, trying not to get rooted. And then they look and their whole team's dead. So that's not very fun, and it hurts my heart to watch these poor 80 carry players attack a Maokai, put 6 or 7 auto attacks into him, and his health bar doesn't even move.
No, it's not the best.
At like 15 minutes. I don't know what you're supposed to do.
No, I mean, if you're behind as an 80 carry now, you're pretty screwed.
Over.
Yeah, even in the mid lane now, they're bringing out those assassins too. You saw Exile play Talon randomly. So you don't do damage, and you get one shot by the mid laner.
So that's why Sivir's coming back, because you press R before you die and help the team.
There you go. That's pretty exciting. So I mean, the thing with the new patch is, especially one that's this massive, is that it really has a widespread, changes to every team. No one really knows what's good. What do we prioritize? What do we ban away? So that gives all these other teams a chance to kind of win some games. And we did see that this week. We saw some upsets, some stuff we didn't expect. But one thing that did happen is G2 is back, and the EU standings are a little different now, with G2 slowly climbing up the leaderboard. They're at 6-3 all of a sudden. Fnatic still in first place in the Group A there. But I mean, G2 looks pretty good all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, ever since Perk said they're not going to lose another game, they're definitely, they're on pace for that. They've won, not games, but they've won series. You see, yeah, I mean, Fnatic still, they're dominant still? Not as dominant, but still just the one loss to Rocket.
With a new playstyle too. Reckless.
Meta playstyle. Yeah, apparently the whole team decided, maybe stop playing Corky bottom. Play some normal stuff. Reckless says fine. And we know he can play him, he's proved it. But yeah, G2 really showed themselves in that H2K series. I kind of had an inkling that they would prove that they're still the kings in Europe. And H2K, whenever they get in these big series where they can make a point that they're one of the top teams in EU, they usually fall flat.
Yeah, it's pretty good for them. I mean, one thing that stood out for me was Trick is back on his jungle champions, Sejuani and Gragas a lot. So even if he's falling behind a little bit, he can still have a presence. He can still make those plays instead of playing those, high damage carries where if you're behind and you get invaded, it's pretty much game over for you.
Yeah, and Expect has had some games too where he's kind of just fed and had some horrible teleports. That's a bit of the team miscommunication as well. Obviously, they aren't coordinating these team fights perfectly, but now Expect and the rest of the team look to have their communication back on track. So if I was playing G2 in the playoffs, I'd be a little worried. Yeah,
Expect really stood out to me. I thought he had a great week. He played a lot of Jarvan, a lot of Renekton, and overall just wasn't caught out. He wasn't, caught by those ganks. Pretty impressed by him, and I mean that's always been the issue with G2 is kind of the top side of the map communicating with the rest of it. You can kind of trust Perks, Sven, and Mithy to hold their own down there, but just that top side has to hold their own, and they did this week, and it shows in their results. So they had a good week, and all of a sudden they're climbing. I'd be again afraid to face the reigning kings of Europe going forward. And you mentioned H2K. And I mean, in the past, if they, like you said, if they have a chance to prove themselves, they're just not going to. They really don't take advantage of it, and especially in the playoffs last split. Hey, first round, Fnatic. Okay, oops, and we're out. So it wasn't great on their part. And again, going into game 3, they had a great chance, and they laid an absolute egg. Didn't perform well whatsoever.
Yeah, and I feel like it's the same pattern over and over. Even when they're swapping different players, you've got Febevin in there now, who's really played great on the big stage. I mean, he solo killed Faker a bunch in MSI, and it's just, I don't know what's going on with them, if it's a mental block. It's definitely something that them and probably have to work on if that's the case. But yeah, maybe it's just they've been so dominated by these top teams like G2 that they feel like they need to do something different or do something more to try and overcome that. But if they just keep playing like they have been the rest of the regular season, I think they could win these sets, but they don't.
No, they don't, and that's the problem with H2K is they'll dominate the lower teams, no problem, but as soon as you get some tough competition in there, they really do struggle. And I mean, the bot lane has looked sketchy in the past weeks. They're pretty hit or miss. One week, oh, look at Nuclear and Che, they're doing great. The next week, oh, look at Nuclear and Che, they're not doing great. So that's very inconsistent. And I mean, again, Febevin, Jankos generally do well. Odoamne's had a couple tough weeks. I think he's getting camped pretty good because teams realize if he gets going, then the team's going to perform well.
And I think Jankos, in some of these big games, he might feel the pressure even more than some of the other guys. And you'll see him kind of disappear in some of them. I don't know if he's worried to make a play that might cost them the game, but sometimes he ends up costing the game by being too passive, which is totally against what he normally does.
Yeah, because he's the first blood king generally, and that hasn't really been the case lately.
First blood prince?
Yeah, it's not as catchy, but that's fine.
Not as good.
And I mean, okay, doing worse than H2K lately is the Unicorns of Love, who have, man, they've been rough ever since they got back from Rift Rivals, and they were the best team at that tournament at 3-3. Got swept by TSM, come back, looked terrible, which is...
You're sporting their colors, though.
That's right. I love the Unicorns of Love. I do not. Anyways,
yeah,
they had a rough week. Rocket beat them, which is never a good sign.
Yeah.
And then Fnatic also, in a 3-game set, took them down.
Yeah, the Rocket set was a little concerning for them because they've obviously struggled the whole split. You thought UOL might come back after Rift Rivals and be like, okay, well, we had the best out of the European teams. It still wasn't great, but it was the best performance. And a lot of the games against TSM were close. It's not like they were getting completely slaughtered, though some of the times they did. But those last 2 games against Fnatic in particular, they got destroyed in around 30 minutes in both of them. And they were just, Fnatic was in control early and never really looked back, just slowly destroyed UOL. Yeah,
after game 2 in that series, it looks like the Unicorns kind of tilted a little bit. They had some interesting picks. They went back to Talon in the mid lane just because it worked in game 1 almost. And then, of course, Sejuani support, which makes a lot of sense.
The classic.
After Hylissang had a great impact on Rakan in the previous sets. So, I mean, the champ select was weird, and then in-game it just did not translate well either, which wasn't very surprising after they lost game 2 to Fnatic. So, Unicorns definitely have some issues going forward. I mean, the one issue that they don't have is Vizicachi, who's been pretty great still. But Exile had a decent week. I know he had some 1v1 kills.
1v1 caps twice.
They still lost. But yes, anyways.
1v1s are all that matter.
That's right.
To be honest.
So, I mean, going forward, they're a team with talent, but they haven't really put it together yet. And I know their early game is awful.
Yeah, they have some of the worst early game in the league. And they have the most deaths. So basically, they're kind of like FlyQuest, a better FlyQuest, but
that's a rough comparison.
A much better FlyQuest, but they also have the shortest games in the league. So it's a bloodbath, and they either are coming out and slaughtering the other team, or they get so behind in these early games. They tend to lose lane pretty frequently, especially mid, because they just camp it, because opposing teams just camp it because it seems to work. But I know this whole chaos style meme has been around this team pretty much since their inception, but some of that still does hold true, where they're just kind of searching for team fights in the mid game, and they'll take any team fight they can get, even if it's not optimal for their comp or the time of the game.
It's also not a good sign if you have the shortest game time, but you thrive in the late game.
Yeah.
That means you're not getting your job done. You're trying to make it last, and it's not working out. So that's definitely a concern. And I'm not really sure about the Unicorns going forward. It does look like they're kind of falling back from Fnatic and G2, who are pretty much clear-cut right now the best teams in Europe.
Yeah, I think there's already a pretty significant gap between those top 2, and then there's a couple of tiers below. Before it was kind of the top 4, but yeah, Fnatic and G2 are separating themselves.
So another team in the tier below is kind of Splyce, and they had a good winning week there. They took down Misfits in an interesting series. I'm not entirely sure what was going on.
Misfits seems to always have interesting
yeah,
series.
Misfits, their style is pretty misfitty. That's the new word we're going to use from now on, yeah.
Definitely not a word.
Well, it is now. So do you think that they're kind of on their way up into the top 4, and maybe these teams like H2K and the Unicorns are falling out of it?
I mean, maybe. I feel like we talk about Splyce like this a lot.
They're always on the edge.
Yeah, they're a team that does pretty much everything well. They don't really struggle mightily at anything, but they don't do anything great. Like mid-game, late game. Their Dragon and Baron controls are just middle of the pack. They're kind of middle of the pack across everything, which makes you a middle of the pack team. Maybe towards the top, though, but I mean, I just can't see them beating teams like, even if H2K actually shows up like they could, or UOL shows up like they have in the past, I don't think Splyce can beat them.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, they've lost 3 games, G2, Fnatic, and H2K. And they've only beaten, of those top teams, is the Unicorns have left. So that basically tells you where they're at. Yeah. Is that they're not a bad team whatsoever, but against good competition, again, they struggle mightily. At least for me, Wonder had a great week this week. He showed that he can carry games along with Senkux. Those solo laners definitely had standout weeks. So that's a strong point going forward, because sometimes you really never know who's going to be the carry week in, week out. But right now it's kind of the meta where you need your mid laner to do a lot of damage on these control mages like Taliyah and Orianna, which is pretty exciting. Don't you love watching Taliyah just to ride around and throw bricks at people?
Are they bricks? Is that what they are?
They're rocks or something.
Yeah, if they're bricks, that's way cooler. But yeah,
that'd be pretty empty.
You basically just spamming Q the whole time. That's kind of fun. I like seeing people get trapped by her ult so they can't move. That's fun. Anytime it bugs out, I'm all in.
I'm sure that's intended.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sold on Splyce being a top team yet. I mean, maybe they can make some noise in the playoffs against one of those H2K or Unicorns if they make that draw.
They could surprise and maybe get 3rd.
Yeah.
But
probably not what they want, but 3rd is honestly a pretty good result for Splyce.
Yeah, I can't see them going more than that.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to check out the top 5 shortest games. I guess that doesn't make sense. Just the 5 shortest games in League of Legends history. Not the top 5, just the shortest ones.
You got it.
So give us your questions during the break, and let us know what you think about the whole Dardoch thing, and Eric and I will definitely touch on it after the break.
In competitive League of Legends, we've seen that games can last for well over an hour, but they can also end in under 20 minutes. In what appears to be a co-op versus AI match, one team absolutely dominates the other and destroys the enemy's nexus. No disconnects, no surrender votes, all games over before the 20-minute mark. Here are the 5 shortest games in League of Legends history. Number 5. Against some tough opposition, Cloud9 got off to a slow start in the 2016 Spring Split. But they turned things around against the Renegades, who were fresh out of the Challenger Series. The game was relatively even at 12 minutes, but C9 turned that into a 12k gold lead, and an inhibitor down just 5 minutes later. Then, with the Renegades thinking they had a pick on Rush, C9 turned the fight around and made a mad dash to end the game.
Black Shield comes in and somehow he's still alive. That means a trade, and that means a shockwave for 2 more. Another double kill for Jensen. Crumbs on the retreat, trying to run away, but a flash in from Sneaky means he's locked up. Freeze nearly takes down Crumbs as well, but another 4 for 0. 13 kills to 1, and this could be a team not named Immortals winning a game in under 20 minutes.
Number 4. The Immortals wasted absolutely no time making a name for themselves in North America. They also wasted no time in-game. With several subs, Echo Fox was outclassed from the start, as Reignover secured first blood just before the 3-minute mark. Reignover continued to snowball the contest, and things quickly got out of hand. Huni had double the CS of Solo, and turrets were falling at a rapid pace. Fox were without a kill until they took down Adrian, seconds before the game ended, ruining his insane KDA on Janna.
On to the Nexus already. This could be a sub-20-minute victory. They kick back 1. Now Hootie in the front lines. Can they keep the team alive? The chain stun comes through, and Adrian halves his KDA before the Nexus goes down.
Number 3. The Flash Wolves have long been one of the premier teams in the LMS, and when they matched up against the worst LMS team in 2016, the result was not surprising. In the spring split, Cougar eSport finished with a game record of 1-27, but their worst loss came in Week 3. Karsa on Nidalee picked up several early kills, and from there it was all downhill. Flash Wolves escalated to a 10k gold lead at 13 minutes. CGE didn't knock down a single turret and only managed a couple of kills, while Flash Wolves exceeded a kill per minute on their way to an easy victory. Number 2. Along with having a nearly perfect split, the Immortals of 2016 spring ended games incredibly fast. Already with one quick finish on the list, Immortals finished off Impulse even quicker. In the very first week, Team Impulse sent out an underwhelming roster with a sub-jungler, and they had no chance. Being outclassed across the map, the game was officially out of Impulse's hands after Pobelter picked up a top lane triple kill. With their eyes on a perfect game, Immortals waltzed into their opposition's base with a massive gold lead.
18 minutes and 10 seconds. Reignover trying to stay alive. The Nexus is low. Can they do it? A perfect game in 18-15 for Immortals.
Number 1. Team Dark trolled in their match against Samsung Ozone as they picked only jungle champions in honor of the recently retired Cloud Templar. A pre-minion spawning invade by Team Dark backfired, handing Samsung a massive early advantage. Continuing their shenanigans, TD secured Dragon at 2 minutes, but handed Ozone 3 more kills. Pushing mid, Samsung got into Team Dark's base by 6 minutes, but rather than fight back, TD filled the map with wards instead. The game ended in 8 minutes and 20 seconds. Safe to say, OGN was displeased by the obvious in-game trolling as they banned Team Dark for the rest of the season.
Hey everyone, welcome back to 5v5 Live. That's still Eric Kummel.
Still is. I haven't changed my name.
I guess I'm still Matt, which is good. So we're going to get into some fun stuff now, because as you can see at the bottom of the screen, Dardoch is back with Team Liquid. Wow!
Joshua.
I know. After all the talk, you know, we saw OmarGod come in for CLG, and Dardoch said on Twitter, oh, you know, he deserves it. He's earned it, yeah, and I haven't been toxic. Apparently you have, Mr. Josh, because you're no longer on the team again after Team Liquid the first time around, gone because of attitude issues.
Yep.
Immortals, gone because of attitude issues. And this time, CLG said that it was something along the lines of, you know, doesn't fit the team culture. So now we go to Team Liquid, where they already have a guy in Reignover who's got pretty similar stats overall.
Yeah, I don't really know what Team Liquid is doing. I don't think this is much of an upgrade or anything. I mean, they had Nori, they've got Reignover. I don't think that's what their main issue is. I don't know how they think this is going to be a solution. They basically have the exact same roster that they had last year now with Dardoch back.
And was that good?
I believe it was the best team in NA, right?
Yeah, probably. That's why they broke up.
Yeah, they're going insane bringing him back, especially when you saw like a month ago or something on his stream, he basically said that Team Liquid, he doesn't respect the organization, he thinks they're hot garbage as usual, doesn't respect the management, the players, anything like that. So anytime a player says that, I don't know why you want to bring them back onto your team. It's just, it doesn't make much sense to me at all for what Liquid's doing.
So you're saying that if you know, you called your organization hot garbage, they wouldn't bring you back on? Just
if I had an organization, they definitely
if you had one,
not.
right? Yeah, it's again, because we know that people on this team have had issues with Dardoch.
The same people that are still there.
Piglet has had issues with Dardoch. I know he's friends with Lorlo, and they've gone along, but they still butt heads. And with management, he's had issues. Yeah. So I guess they've ironed something out. Something's changed. But I mean, at this point, Team Liquid is 4-10, and they don't really have much of a chance at making playoffs. They'd have to win out and have another team lose all their games, which I wouldn't count on. But there is a chance. But again, like, the plan is not clear to me.
I don't think there is a plan. Okay. It's just maybe let's bring the old gang back together one last time before our entire organization changes when franchising comes in to the NA LCS. Yeah. But I don't think people particularly loved that lineup. Maybe they loved it because it basically had an entire feature-length film about
Yes.
the drama. It was basically a reality show with Dardoch on there. He was just straight up flaming guys before, after, during games. So I don't know. Maybe that'll.
Well,
they're thinking that'll bring back some more fans.
If you're not winning, reality show is the clear other option.
It's basically the best option all the time.
Yeah.
Even when you're winning.
That wasn't the only acquisition they made. They also got Mickey from the Rocks Tigers, which kind of came out of nowhere too, especially after week 7 of the LCS. I guess they're making moves for this franchising next year, but it looks like they might run something where Mickey and Dardoch sub in as a duo, and then Reignover and Golden Glue stay going together.
Great synergy, right? Dardoch and Mickey.
They actually had a good week. Or yeah, Dardoch and Mickey, they've definitely played together in the past.
Yeah.
But Reignover and Golden Glue had a good week. They went 2-0 all of a sudden. And then, of course...
Better bench them.
Yeah. See you guys. 2-0, not good enough. Yeah.
And having Mickey on Liquid was a great meme in itself, with them being affiliated with Disney. So, of course, you have to bring in the guy named Mickey. They already have Piglet. I don't know if Winnie the Pooh is Disney affiliated.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
Well, let us know in the comments if Winnie the Pooh is Disney affiliated. I don't think it is, but I have no idea what Liquid is doing.
No. I mean, they should bring back Pooh Mandu as well.
Yeah.
Maybe he's interested in coming back. Who knows?
Yeah, he hasn't played in 3 years. Might as well sign him up on Liquid.
Disney. Very good. But yeah, the other team involved in this is CLG, who, OmarGod hasn't seen much time. He's played in 4 games with a 2-2 record, but I mean, he's had some pretty hit or miss performances. I'm not entirely sure that we've seen enough from him to earn a starting job. I know that in scrims and stuff, they said he's been a great jungler, but I mean, so far it's been kind of sketchy.
Yeah, I don't know how much they have incorporated him into scrims throughout the split, but I mean, Dardoch must have been pretty toxic or not good for a team that's competing for Worlds to completely change a player with basically like 4 weeks going left into the split when he subbed in, to just bring him in and groom him for Worlds. That's a pretty bold move. So yeah, Dardoch they really didn't like what he was doing.
No, and I mean, that there was some weird stuff going on when he would. I mean, they wouldn't bring Dardoch back in for game 3. They would stick with OmarGod, even though maybe they had already lost the first game, or going into a crucial game 3. Who do you trust more? Well, apparently they trusted OmarGod more, and I mean, he's got a better KDA with CLG. He's got a better kill participation, but those numbers aren't that close. And I mean, the win-loss there. Dardoch had some good success with CLG, but all of a sudden he's gone, and they're going to stick with OmarGod for the rest of the way.
Yeah, and obviously there's not that much information for OmarGod to have these stats. Yeah, he hasn't really been in the league much, and now that's going to be a lot of pressure on him to be on a contending team. It's one thing for Mike Young to come into a completely struggling team with no expectations and really bring them back up, even though they're still last. But this is a guy who's fighting for the top spot, a team that's fighting for the top spot in the LCS, and now to bring in this guy, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. But I mean, CLG, the first team that everyone's looked at throughout the league, and if Dardoch couldn't work there, then I don't know about his future.
Yeah, CLG is kind of that friends first, winning later kind of team. You don't really see them have too much strife anymore after their organization was a mess for several years. The whole double lift ordeal with the Link thing, the Dexter thing. Seraph telling Dexter never to gank his lane again was one of my favorite moments of all time, I gotta say. Thoroughly enjoyed that. But all of a sudden, they're gonna ride with OmarGod, a guy who's only really played Olaf and Gragas so far in the LCS. And Olaf is also kind of his pocket pick, which he's been playing throughout the Challenger Series with Counter Logic Academy. So they know what he's made of, but really haven't seen too much from him in the LCS just yet.
Yeah, and we'll see if if that really hinders CLG's playoff run going forward, or maybe he'll prove to be a really great guy, and we'll just be complimenting yet again the NA jungler talent that's up and coming, and maybe the scouting grounds are actually working.
Possible. Rookie of the split. Another rookie of the split.
Oh!
Yeah. Where's the meme?
Where's the meme? There it is.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I mean, we're not going to talk too much about Phoenix 1 today, so you got to squeeze it in there somewhere.
Yeah, we still love you, Mike Young.
We do. Forever.
Forever.
Forever Mike Young. In first place in North America is the Immortals, all by themselves. Last week, they were stuck in a three-way tie there. All of a sudden, it's just the Immortals. Look at them.
Wow.
First place.
As everyone thought.
That's
at
right.
the start of the split.
It's they had a pretty good week, I gotta say. Pretty impressed. We were kind of concerned a couple weeks back. They had a rough one. Dropped in 0-2, and all of a sudden they're right back at it. And they look solid. They kind of remind me of an old Immortals team where they would get into a lot of these bloodbath style fights. But it's a bit more organized and a bit more thought out, mostly because of Xsmithy.
Yeah, he's been great for them. And now with this Dardoch move, it's pretty obvious who won that trade.
Could you specify?
And really just, you know, I've been hesitant to say Immortals is actually a good or great team pretty much the whole split, but I think I'm starting to come around. And Cody's son has had basically the biggest change from split to split, the biggest improvement that I can recall in the NA LCS history. If they had a Most Improved Player award, it would most definitely go to him. He's looked like one of the best ADs in the league, and even Pole Belter of late has really stepped up on some carry champions, and he's dominated.
Yeah, I mean, Cody Sun's a guy to me who can adapt to the meta really quickly. You saw him pick up the Jhin already with these lethality changes. As soon as Kalista was a thing, he picked that up. He's really good at just playing a bit of everything right now. And I mean, for Cody Sun, it's not just him. This bot lane as a whole with Ole as well. I mean, Ole had a bit of a problem with last hitting the champions from time to time, which no AD carry is thrilled with. But this week he dialed it back and let Cody Sun get those champs or those kills, and it really did make a difference. And you saw him carry these games by himself in some moments. Very impressive bot lane. All of a sudden, they're like probably a top 3, maybe even higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely been the most consistent. Even if you look at TSM and C9's bottom lane, they've had some weeks where they've looked kind of off, and CLG as well. So really, Immortals has probably been the most consistent bot lane this entire split, which sounds absolutely insane to say.
It's absurd.
It's absurd.
I mean, Immortals was a team where last split, they really didn't look great. Pole Belter had a KD floating around 2.2. All of a sudden, he's had this massive change. And really, it's just because of Smithy. But obviously, it's more than that. This team's had some time to mesh, get comfortable with each other. The bot lane, the biggest improvement for me. So it's not... At the beginning of the split, everyone was wondering, are the Immortals for real? For real.
For real.
But right now, I would have to say, yes, they are.
Yeah, and we'll see come playoff time. But I was just kind of expecting them to, whoever they play, they'll probably lose that series if it's one of these top 3 teams like C9, TSM, or CLG. But right now, I think they've got a chance against pretty much any of them. I definitely still favor someone like TSM or C9 against them, but I think they are a pretty legit contender to win the summer split.
Yeah, and you said Cloud9 right there. I heard
I did.
You did say Cloud9.
I wasn't trying to hide it.
As a top 3 team. And they had a great bounce back week because, man, they struggled not too long ago, especially Rift Rivals, the whole Ray Impact thing, and just Sneaky had a rough week.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, Sneaky had an excellent week. You saw him on Kog'Maw have a couple great games. I mentioned contracts earlier on that. Kane have a big impact. You don't see a ton of guys bring out those new champions right away in the LCS, but he had a great understanding of it. And it seems like they do understand the meta a little bit. They kind of run the tanks to a certain degree, but they don't go all out on that tank system as well. But they do run the carry jungler from time to time. So I kind of like what they've done, and it was all Impact this series, or this week. He played all 6 games and looked pretty good overall.
Well, yeah, especially when champs like Maokai or Cho'Gath are coming back.
It's tough.
And that's kind of been his bread and butter. He's way better at frontlining and engaging than Ray is. I think we've just seen that throughout their split time together. But yeah, C9, they've really shown they can play a bunch of different play styles, whether they're playing around Sneaky as the Kog'Maw, whether Jensen's just hard carrying, they're doing the 1-3-1 split. They've really shown the diversity they can do a lot of it, and yeah, they looked pretty confident in this week. After dropping game 1 to Dignitas, they had 41 kills to 12 deaths in the next 2 games against them. So
pretty good.
Completely flipped it around and just dominated them to close out that series. They had a couple of tentative moments in Dignitas's base where they threw a couple of fights, but other than that, pretty clean week from them.
Yeah, Smoothly also impressed by him being able to pick up Taric so quickly, and just he had those changes to his Q as well, so he looked good on Taric. I think he had something like 80 assists this week, which is absurd. So I mean, after the Dignitas game where they beat TSM, everyone was wondering if they were going to take down C9 too. It was close. It was a great series, but overall, Cloud9 shows that they're still a top team here. And going into playoffs, it's pretty exciting because I think all 6 teams who are not completely locked in yet, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be locked in.
It looks like it, yeah.
By the weekend.
Until Liquid comes.
Right, until Liquid comes storming up. Looks locked in, and I'm pretty excited to see some upsets happen. I think 1 can beat 6, 6 can beat 1 potentially.
Yeah, I think this is the closest that I remember going into playoffs where there could actually be upsets. Usually, especially in some of the matches, you're like, okay, well, TSM or C9 will probably 3-0 them, maybe 3-1, but they're heavily favored. I think, yeah, a lot of these are kind of, not quite toss-ups, but definitely either team could win.
Yeah. And I mean, we saw it this week when Dignitas beat TSM in a sweep, a clean sweep.
Ooh, oh.
Dignitas looked really good. Their laners were outperforming TSM's. I mean, Altec and Adrian were beating up Doublelift and Biofrost. And I've heard Doublelift come out and say that his team performed poorly, that the whole patch changes, the team's not ready for it. And just every team adapts to a new change or a new patch differently, and you never know who's going to pick up on what champ is all of a sudden really good. What do you prioritize? And it looks like some teams did, and TSM didn't do a great job of that.
Yeah, and really the play that stood out to me, obviously Altec was great for them in that whole set, the whole week really, but Keen was fantastic as well. Some of his cleanses on Cassiopeia were just great, and the fact that basically a couple splits ago when he was on Gravity, he just looked at, everyone was like, oh, this guy just picks counter picks, he picks Urgot mid, and then here we are a couple splits later, and he's really proven that he can play meta champions and play them pretty well. Yeah, he went toe-to-toe with Bjergsen and was even better than him in a couple of games, which is something you don't say very often.
No, and someday has the pleasure of going back to the Maokai that he loves so much. It's pretty exciting. But another guy, I mean, no one really talks about Shrimp, who really took over for Chaser out of nowhere. And this week he played Graves both games against TSM, someone who's not really considered a meta champion anymore. But the changes on patch 7.14 do help a little bit. And then also playing Nunu, who's a totally different end of the spectrum than Graves. So to be able to just go back and forth between these carry champs to Nunu, it's pretty interesting. And I mean, he's performed quietly really great for Dignitas.
Yeah, and Nunu, obviously one of the most mechanically intensive champions
That's right.
in the game.
It's tough.
But it is tough to play, even though you only press 2 buttons, you just click on people. But yeah, Nunu, a tough guy to master, and Shrimp, yeah, has shown he can play both playstyles in the jungle.
All right. Well, it's everyone's favorite time when we answer your
Is
questions.
it question time?
It's question time.
Oh.
Ooh. We need a theme song for question time. Question time. There it is.
That's it?
That's
the
song.
best theme song I've ever heard.
That's right.
Write it down.
I will. Thank you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Wesley Brown says TSM looked lost this weekend. Think they get it together going forward?
Yeah, I think they will. I think maybe it is a bit of this meta change that's thrown them off, but even against Echo Fox, they were behind at 15 minutes in pretty much every single one of those games, which is a little concerning because they're obviously not great. They sub out players pretty much every game and lose because of it, but I definitely think TSM will get it turned around, and I still think they'll be the favorites when the playoffs finally start up.
It's yeah, I think TSM will get together. Again, a lot of it is due to the whole patch change, and it was a massive patch, a huge patch. And I mean, there's going to be another one coming forward, so maybe that hurts them again soon. 7.15 already announced, which seems pretty quick.
They're pumping out these patches like they used to champions every 2 weeks.
Right, but we saw it with CLG in the past. They would new patch. Oh boy, takes them like a month to get ready for it. So TSM had that week this week. Again, it's a big meta shift. Hanzo's got to go back to these tank champions. Svenskeren can't play Lee Sin as much, so that's going to hurt them.
But anytime a team has gone to 9 straight LCS finals looking for 10, I think they'll get back on track.
I don't know. They don't have much of a history in North America, but
that's true. You don't record history.
Super B Based wants to know, will Liquid win Worlds? Pretty bold question.
I don't think so.
I
think it's
it's
pretty
almost
obvious.
mathematically impossible for them to win Worlds.
Almost.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got the Dream Team back.
Dream Team.
I think everyone will just be so terrified of Dardoch screaming at them and maybe potentially throwing things at them if they don't perform well. Maybe a fire will be lit and they'll go on a miraculous run. But actually, no. I'll be shocked if they don't finish last.
Last?
Yeah, P1's coming.
They've been coming for a
long
long
Don't count
time.
out my boy Mike Young. Okay? He's still coming.
Okay, wait, can you count out Pyrian though?
Yes.
Okay, very
yes,
good.
You can.
That's fantastic. CLG said that Dardoch didn't fit their culture. Do you think that could refer to playstyle over toxicity? He seemed to fit well with the roster and organizations in terms of personality.
I mean, I think it could maybe do with playstyle because they mentioned they put in OmarGod to show him that how to play as 5 members of a team together as a team. So maybe that relates to him kind of playing selfish jungling where he's, I don't know, focused more on farming or not getting his teammates ahead, but just making sure that either the other jungler's behind or he's ahead. And maybe that's what they're referring to.
Yeah.
It could be a bit of that, but I still think the attitude problem is definitely prominent.
Yeah, it doesn't disappear overnight. And you've seen so many people complain about it in the past, whether it was on the Team Liquid series or Pobelter going on about how he just doesn't get along with Reignover or Dardoch. And you just sometimes, you've seen him just not be able to have a conversation when it comes to, losing. So that's never a good sign. But also, I mean, the playstyle could be an issue because I don't think Dardoch is overly thrilled with playing Gragas all the time. I don't think he
loves Rengar.
He does love Rengar, which didn't pan out very well when he played it. So, I mean, it makes sense for CLG to say, you know what, let's not play Rengar. Go back on Gragas. Or I'll just go to a different team. Back to Team Liquid.
That's a better option.
Yeah, absolutely. How good does a player have to be in order for his toxicity to be a secondary issue? It's not like he's carrying teams to the top when he's a roster. So, basically, are you okay if your star player is toxic? Kind of like Forgiven.
Yeah, that's the best example.
He was an absolute carry for whatever team he played on.
Yep.
But he would be borderline, I don't want to say abusive because that's definitely not the right word, but he would just, be pretty rough on his supports, on his teammates from time to time.
Yeah.
Whenever they lost, oh, my teammates were bad.
So yeah, in that sense, you basically need to be a top 2 in your position, at least in your league, or at least be almost recognized for your talent internationally. Because Forgiven, when he played internationally, even other teams were like, hey, this guy is obviously mechanically gifted. He's really good at the game, and he's a toxic flamer.
Right.
So you've got to be at the very upper echelon.
Woo,
tough word to say. I don't think Dardoch is up there.
No, it's a tough question, though, because even with Doublelift, when he was on CLG, I wouldn't really call him toxic, but he had disagreements with a lot of players, and a lot of teammates didn't like him all that much either. And even he eventually ended up going to TSM and leaving CLG. I know that was kind of internal and a group decision kind of thing, but just whenever you have these toxicity issues, you're going to have problems on a team, and it seems like a lot of teams are going with this friendship style, if you will, instead of just overall talent.
Yeah, which also has its pros and cons. Sometimes you need to be a little ruthless and be like, make this work with this roster. It doesn't matter if you're not all buddy-buddy, as long as you don't strongly dislike or can't even hold a conversation with some of your teammates.
Yeah, and Matty Ice RAR, kind of like RAR. Yeah, that's right, RAR. Do you think CLG threw away their playoff hopes with this move?
Well, first off, Matty Ice, I'm so sorry about what happened last season. But
poor Falcons.
That's right. I need you to repeat the question now.
Do you think CLG threw away their playoff hopes?
Definitely not their playoff hopes. Like going deep in the playoffs.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to be either they had to be really confident in OmarGod, or they just really didn't want Dardoch going forward. Because I think this is a pretty big obstacle to just implement this guy into your lineup with only a couple weeks left heading into the playoffs, especially when the race is so close with those top 6 teams and there's really no huge favorites heading into it. I think they might have hurt their chances, definitely for Worlds.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how great their chances were going into it because, in all honesty, against top teams, they haven't done well whatsoever. I mean, when they faced TSM, it's pretty much an insta-lose. And then against Immortals, they couldn't win any of the series. So did they have great playoff hopes in going deep? Honestly, I don't think so because you've seen them struggle against the top teams. They might have even lost a set to Dignitas or Envy if they got in that matchup. So I wasn't sold on them, and they've looked kind of sketchy to me in these past few weeks. And I do think maybe in that week in between Rift Rivals, maybe they were practicing with OmarGod a little bit more and kind of getting ready for this whole change. So honestly, they might even do better with OmarGod. So
yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy who's going to, sounds like he'll be able to adapt his play style to whatever the team wants, especially coming into this lineup with 4 guys who have been together so long. He's definitely going to try and play to their strengths and kind of take the advice or the direction from whatever the team wants. So I think that'll fit the playstyle a lot better for CLG because that's pretty much what Smithy did when he was on the team. Right.
So now TL has 2 junglers. Or 3, I guess you could say. Do you think there's a chance that Reignover goes to CLG?
Like this season?
I don't know.
I mean, Reignover hasn't been great
No.
ever since he left Immortals. I know a lot of that is you can't do that much with a lot of
That's
these.
That's probably the Team Liquid effect
Liquid
too,
rosters. Yeah, but I mean, it seems like CLG's pretty set on OmarGod, and to bring in another guy, there's not enough time. Even if Reignover was fantastic and back like he was with Immortals and Fnatic, there's not enough time to implement that guy. As you mentioned, OmarGod's at least been screwing with them, and they've slowly worked him into the lineup, so there's just not enough time.
CLG's just a team that doesn't really dip into that import pool too much. I mean, everyone, I'm sure they could find a Huhi upgrade somewhere, in the past, you know, there've been all kinds of questions about him, but they stuck with him, and all of a sudden he's looking like a top mid laner in North America. So maybe the same thing will happen with OmarGod. They just really like to develop their own players into the play style they have, and work from there. So I think they'll probably stick with him. I don't think they're going to dip into the import slot whatsoever.
And when you keep guys like Hui on the roster, he's got to have a greater appreciation for the organization, especially when he had struggles and they stuck with him. It's not like he had one bad split and they were like, okay, see ya, we're going to get someone else. They stuck with him, and yeah, now they're all great friends on there.
Absolutely. Good friends. That's what you need.
That's right.
Wesley Brown, if you had to replace one lane in C9, what lane other than top would it be, and who would you be placing on it? I guess that leaves you with Sneaky Smoothie in the bot lane or Jensen. I'd probably leave Jensen.
Contracts.
Yeah, I like contracts.
Contracts is pretty good.
I think you could replace Sneaky and not get too much of a drop off, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you can pick anyone in NA. I mean, put Cody Sun in there.
Keith?
Let's go. Okay, please don't put Keith.
That's a joke, everybody. Sneaky is much better than Keith.
No, Keith's better. Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you could take out Sneaky and put Mike Young in.
Right.
He could play AD. He'd be pretty amazing. But I think Sneaky probably is
the most
one
replaceable.
That you could pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mainly because of his role, and
right now you just throw Ash arrows or press R on Sivir.
Yeah, like a guy like Smoothie is vital to the team because he does most of the shot calling.
Right.
Jensen, obviously, the only person you could really replace him with without much of a drop off or any is Bjergsen. That's about it, and I think Contracts is still probably one of the better junglers in NA, so it's probably Sneaky.
So sticking with Cloud9, Meaty Belly wants to know, what do you think we can hope to see from Cloud9 in the coming weeks? Was the bounce back a sign of hope, or is it possible for them to flop again?
I mean, it is possible for them to flop again, but they're kind of a team like TSM who has a pretty rich history in the scene, so I think this is them getting back on track. And you saw last split just how close they were to knocking off TSM. I think they'll get close to that point again, and they'll definitely be contending in this year's playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize how much of an issue they had with the whole Ray and Impact having both health issues and personal issues at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, it affects your scrims, it affects everything you do for weeks. And even going to Rift Rivals would affect some teams negatively as well. You take it away, taking away scrim time, and I think Doublelift even came out and said that they went to Europe to face lesser opponents than they would have if they just stayed to scrim in North America.
Yeah, and just the fact that you're going through that whole travel campaign in the span of like 4 days and you're trying to adjust and everything, especially if you're not feeling that well and your team has kind of been struggling in scrims and stuff like that, getting completely out of your routine like that, maybe it'll help, but I feel like it'd be more detrimental. But I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. Again, Impact is back, so it looks like his health issues are far and away. And again, tank meta for Impact, he loves it.
That's the dream.
That's the dream. So
Lamau Kai every day.
I think they're going to be okay going forward, and probably expect them to climb the standings a little bit. I know there'll be some tough competition in the final weeks. Of course, they've got to face TSM again. So always excited for that matchup. Yeah,
that's always pretty hype.
Yeah. So Dylan Costello wants to know, who do you think will win Worlds out of all the region? His money is on Longzhu.
No, I mean, I think Korea's probably a pretty safe bet.
Wow, you're gutsy.
For the region.
You're bold, man.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. They've kind of completely turned it around the last couple of weeks, really. It's basically all these Korean teams are passing SKT now in the power rankings around the world. I'd have to look into more of the Korean teams. I just know they're super strong. I don't know the full details of all the teams. I need to do a little bit more research on them.
There's definitely a logjam at the top there with Samsung and KT as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
KT is probably a pretty good bet. That team is...
They're very explosive.
It's like an all-star team still, of course, that lineup.
It is.
So, I'll put my money on them.
Wow, look at you. Going with Korea.
Joke's on you. I don't have any money. So.
Wow. That's even bolder then. That's impressive. All right. Public enemy number 1. What's it going to take for CLG to win the summer split?
Poor performances by a couple teams, probably. Unless OmarGod lives up to his name and is a total god in all these games. I mean, CLG has had some glaring issues, and yeah, like you mentioned, they have struggled against these top teams. So going in a best of against them, I think they'd just be outmatched against TSM. And if C9 plays like we know they can, even a team like Immortals, I think. I mean, they won this season series against CLG 2-0. I don't know I would like them in a matchup against CLG, especially Xmithy with the Vengeance game.
Yeah, it's definitely, they're going to need a lot to go right, I think, because OmarGod is going to have to step it up. We've only seen him play 2 champs so far. Luckily, it's kind of another tank jungle meta where you can just play Cho'Gath or Maokai and get away with it. So you don't have to do too much in terms of carrying the game. Just really get in there and get those ganks going. But, I mean, they just definitely have to be a lot cleaner. At least for them when they're behind, they always try to make something happen, but that usually just results in them losing the game a lot quicker. But, I mean, it's just an interesting team because all year they've been making these weird choices in the games. They've been winning, but it always hasn't been super clean. So,
but I feel like they could really click randomly in the playoffs because as we've said before, their communication is usually on point. They're all listening to the call and making the same call. So if they really start making the right calls in these games and they're all on the same page, they can really snowball some of these games. But as we've seen a lot this split, they all go in on the wrong decision and it ends pretty poorly for them.
Yeah. Andy Fan wants to know, what do you think about C9 staying with the same players and same style from last split, continuing with it this split, and staying in the middle of the pack? I guess instead of dominating like they usually do. It's been the same roster now, but less results.
I mean, again, last split, they were so close
to
knocking
really good,
off TSM. Basically one big team fight away from winning that series. So I have no problem with them coming in with the same split. They haven't really dominated in a couple of years since that original lineup completely destroyed NA for a couple splits. But I don't really necessarily, even though they are in the middle of the pack, I still think people look at them as the upper echelon team up there with TSM based just on their history. So, and now that they've kind of worked through, it seems like the Impact and Ray issues, I think this roster is still really solid.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not too concerned about them at all, to be honest. Again, going into a different split, it's an entirely different game, and it takes time to get used to the changes and whatnot. So, and C9's probably had more internal struggles than any other team this split with that top lane situation. So I give them a bit of a break on that. So I'm pretty sure that they'll have a pretty solid performance going forward. I'm not too concerned about Cloud9. See them in the semis at least.
Yeah, I think anything but the semis would be a bit of a disappointment for them.
Yeah, like sure they're 8-6 tied with Dig and Envy, but they're definitely a step above both those teams, I would say.
Yeah.
Bruce the Moose.
That's a great name.
That's the name.
Bruce the Moose.
For new teams to pay their way into the pro scene, $10 million. Hello.
5 up front.
That's right. What do you believe will become of the challenger scene as a result, or other regions follow suit?
I think other regions may eventually follow suit. But in terms of the Challenger Series, it's definitely going to be beneficial to have a mandatory academy team for each team. It's only going to help build this scouting grounds or whatever they want to call it. And maybe some teams, I bet, will take it a little bit more seriously at first, and other teams might put out like a Delta Fox squad that's probably not going to do too much in the standings, but maybe get you some fans. But I think the Challenger scene has been an issue for almost as long as its existence, in at least NA for sure. So I think this is only going to help it. Maybe EU will follow suit, but I feel like even their Challenger scene is less of an issue because you saw teams like Origin come from there and then they get 4th at Worlds, although that's kind of a special case.
It is a special case because now they're not even in the Challenger Series, which is excellent. Goodbye, Origin. That's
what
actually
a roller
sad to
coaster.
say. Yeah, I know. If you're an Origin fan, it's pretty great.
Goodbye.
And then pretty depressing.
If you're an Origin fan, you're not anymore.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, for teams going forward, I mean, especially for Europe to have the same thing that NA has with the whole franchising, you have to be sure that you can actually have enough teams buy into it.
Right.
Which, I mean, North America, I'm pretty sure you can get 10 teams to fill out a split. But in Europe, that's not entirely the case. I mean, I know NIP bought in, but there's teams like the Monkeys, so I don't know where they're going to stand in terms of their cash flow, Vitality. Just all these teams that don't really get results from time to time. It's really those big teams, and there's a pretty good fall-off after that. So I don't know if there's that many teams who can afford a $10 million buy-in in Europe. And if there's not, then you're going to look pretty bad when you start a franchising system with only 3 teams in it.
Yeah, and there's going to be 7 different brands that you've never heard of before that are totally new to the scene.
Right.
So.
Though I guess they could get those soccer teams going again. PSG coming up, Red Bull.
Yeah, I think they would definitely invest. $5 million is nothing to them.
No, nothing at all. Will Dardoch ever be reformed? 2 teams thought they could tame him, but he is crawling back to a team he publicly trash talked. I mean, he is a young guy. He's 19 still.
Yeah.
But obviously he has not quite learned his lesson when it comes to trash talking your teammates or your organization.
But he wasn't really he didn't really suffer the repercussions for it. They still brought him back. Usually you completely roast an employer or a team like that, and they're not going to be like, oh, come on back, man. We loved when you were here.
Even though we absolutely did not.
Yeah.
It was awful.
So.
And you called me an idiot. I don't
call me
to.
hot garbage.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no real discipline for what he did there. Teams are still going to try him out because he does have that potential ceiling of being one of the top junglers maybe in the region. But I feel like even his play has fallen off a bit lately.
Again, I don't think it's a good meta for him whatsoever.
Right.
He's not on those carry champs. So he likes to do that. Instead, he's playing Gragas, and he's still being toxic. Maybe. We don't know for sure. I don't want to speculate and call him toxic when maybe he's not. Maybe it was just a team thing.
Based on that CLG announcement, it sounds like it was a bit of playstyle and attitude.
Yeah.
They were both there.
Give me video. Give me proof.
Oh, they'll release a CLG end of the season thing, I'm sure.
Sean Hepp wants to know which player is most affected by 7.14 and the new meta. Interesting question, because there was a lot of changes. The AD carries going back to, I'm going to play Sivir. But those kind of changes don't really affect too many AD carries. It's just we can't carry the game as much. If anything, it's just a downgrade overall for all of them. So it might be a guy for me like Dardoch, because all of a sudden it is this jungle meta. It's perfect for a guy like Smithy, where you just roam the map and do the supportive playstyle. But if you're one of those carry guys, it's definitely going to be tougher on you.
Yeah, I think it's really going to help a guy like Impact, who we also already mentioned.
Yeah.
We've seen him when he plays these carry-type champions. He's just not quite as comfortable being squishy. He can't quite make the dive-in plays like he would on someone like a Maokai. And he's shown over his career that when he's playing these huge frontline tanks that he plays his role super well, and the team plays well behind him. So now playing these champions, I think C9 is going to excel even more than they were earlier in the split.
Let's take a few more questions there, Eric. If you can handle it.
I can handle it, as Jaden Smith once said.
There you go. Mitchell Long, with so much talent in the Challenger Series, do you think there should be more than 10 teams franchising the LCS? There could be a lot of talent, but at the same time, with more teams, there's going to be that lack of parity, which we don't like to see. When TSM faces off against FlyQuest, I might turn off not TV, because I don't watch it on TV, but I might turn off Twitch. I might turn away, because honestly, you want to see as many competitive teams as possible, and if you just load it up with this talent that may or may not be excellent, it's just not going to be a great result. So you set this high price tag, and you aim for that 10. I think it's a solid number right now, unless NA, through this new Challenger Series, really develops a lot more talent. But for now, I'm pretty happy with the 10. Yeah,
I think more than 10 would, you'd really see a diluted talent pool.
Yeah.
And some of those teams would just be unable to win a game because they just don't have, they'd have like bottom tier players in basically every position. So I think starting with 10 is fine because the league is used to it, and maybe you can grow from there if the challenger scene actually works out and you're getting some nice talented players coming from there. Maybe then you could expand it, but definitely start with 10.
Yeah, I think 10's a good spot. Our friend Philip Paul. Phil, how are you doing?
Shout out to Phil. How you
there
doing,
he
Phil?
is. Do you think that Fly is having problems because they've lost sight of their identity? Like their thing was picking crazy things that nobody was ready for, like Blitzcrank and Mordekaiser. Honestly, I think
I don't think Mordekaiser worked too well.
No, it wasn't great. I think that was one of their issues, to be honest. Like, it wasn't just a pocket pick. It was this absurd selection that didn't make any sense. Like, Smithy's got a pocket pick Jarvan, who he's got Aurelion Sol, and Altec had when he was on FlyQuest, Mordekaiser. It's a little different.
Yeah, one of those doesn't fit.
No, I just think that they were kind of like a fresh team when they entered the LCS last split, and all of a sudden now everyone's onto their gimmick of being super aggressive early, and again, they're just mechanically not a super gifted team overall.
Yeah, and I think their gimmick was suited to whatever meta was in there, and they did the research, they played the games to get those picks for that meta, and then as the meta continually recycles, they don't have time to look into those picks, and now, as we mentioned, the patches seem to be changing every couple weeks. They don't have time to adapt and come up with cheese strategies for those, so yeah, they're struggling. Yeah. I think they're just outclassed by the other teams at this point.
Phil says they won the game with Mordekaiser, but I'm pretty sure there was more than one time they pulled it out. Maybe it was the Maokai support I'm thinking about.
They did play that too.
That was bad, yeah.
They might have won the Mordekaiser one, but I still don't think it's very good. Or
yeah,
was very good when they did it.
There was some weird... I don't want to talk about FlyQuest. Yeah, it's gross. We'll get one more question from Wesley Brown. FlyQuest is drowning. They're not doing very well. Should High hang up the mouse?
Ooh, hang up the mouse.
Just drape it over your
For the
curtain.
second, third time. He's retired a couple of times.
Yeah, he's had some wrist issues and whatnot, yeah.
Yeah. I really think it might be time for those 3 original C9 members to kind of fade away, maybe into a coaching type role. I know High and Lemon Nation have both kind of said they'd be interested in coaching, but I mean, for a guy like High, I feel like he's got to be getting burnt out at least. He's been around for a pretty long time, and yeah, he's played on some different teams, and especially if this team, as it looks like, is going to continue to struggle and not make playoffs. If I was him, it might be hard to step away, but he's definitely still one of the greatest players in NA history.
Yeah, no disrespect to High, he's one of the greatest, but right now, definitely not one of the greatest. But, I mean, he's been around for forever. He's done so many great things for North America and Cloud9 at Worlds, the reverse sweep legend, the shot calling abilities. So, I mean, he's had a great career, but probably, especially going forward, we don't know what's going to happen with FlyQuest. Are they going to dump in $10 million? I don't know. Yeah,
it really depends what happens to the team going forward into next split. If they're completely bought out and the entire roster's turned over, then he might not have a choice.
He might not have a choice. But I guess that's
he could boost another team from Challenger, though.
He could. He's well, Challenger's gone. Sorry.
He could go in scouting grounds. Look at this new young talent.
Hi. He's going to wear a costume or something.
Ever heard of him?
that should be good. That'd be very entertaining. He's worn wigs in the past, I think, so just put on another one.
Has he worn wigs?
I don't. That might be an assumption.
Okay.
I'm sure. Yeah. Most people have put on a wig from time to time, so I think it's a pretty safe assumption.
I guess Matt's really into wigs.
That's right. Yeah. You have anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
I just want to say thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all of your
great
questions.
Today.
Wow. There were a lot of good questions. And just the one last thing before we go today. Matt's already shaking his head. Today is Matt's birthday.
It is
he
not.
went the whole show
true.
without saying that it was his birthday. So let's get a shout out to Matt. Happy birthday, Matt. Way to make the show great in your pink shirt. He's 65 years old.
That's
Can you believe that?
Yeah, I know.
65.
It's showing the age here.
Yeah.
We're going to leave now because I don't like what you just did. That's Eric.
That's Matt. It's his birthday.
Oh, thank you. Very good. That's all the time we have for 5v5 Live. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Eric. That's very kind. You're very nice.
Great questions.
Yes, great questions. Exactly. So we're back every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Tune in, and we'll be back next week. Again, thanks for your question, guys, and we will see you very soon.